I'm a very sentimental person. Take this watch, for example. I got this watch from my grandpa after he passed away, and this was his 25-year anniversary gift from his work. May 30th, 1986. This is actually the original wristband for it. I wore it for a good while and then it broke, unfortunately. And due to my sentimental nature, I can't really part ways with it. Just the idea that this has been around my grandpa's wrist once, that just makes me want to keep it. But the cool thing is that this wristband comes from a watch that I bought 7 years ago or so when my friend Daniel and I converted a van and started traveling around Europe. We were watching one of my favorite movies, Into the Wild, and in it, he's wearing a gold watch while he's out traveling. And I like the idea of that, having a watch that's gonna be with me through this adventure and then for years to come. But then I started wearing the watch that I got from my grandpa, and when the wristband broke on that, I tried with this and it fit almost perfectly. And that made it all the more special to me because now it's my grandpa's watch face and it's the wristband that traveled all over Europe with me and took me on that whole journey. And that leads me to this wall. This wall came about a couple of weeks ago when I was doing my office. I came up with the idea of making one of the walls here a sort of memorabilia / sentimental value / interest wall, and this is what I came up with. Disc golf. I picked this up in August of 2021, and after my first session, I was just hooked. This is my bag right here. It has a lot of discs. That confuses a lot of people. Like, you look at these two Frisbees. If I were to throw these the same exact way, they would fly different. And that's what you love about it, because sometimes you need to execute a specific shot through the woods and you pick the right disc, you do the right angles, the right powers, and you just see the disc do exactly what you envisioned it to do. And when that happens, it's the best feeling ever. I bought this axe a couple of months before leaving on that van trip, so that means it's been with me for like 7 years at this point. I love this specific brand because they make such quality products, so if you take good care of them, they're gonna stick with you for a lifetime probably. It sits on the wall now, but it's fully removable because I still use it all the time, but I felt like it had a place on the wall. This is the first field notes I finished cover to cover using this pen. It doesn't hold all that much sentimental value, but I like the idea of having my first successful field notes framed. Speaking of which, it is time to start a new one because my current one is on its last page basically, and it's extremely beat up. These sandals have been with me all over the place. Them too came in connection with that van trip like 7 years ago, and I'm realizing a lot of roads sort of lead back to that trip, and that's because that was basically the start of my creative journey and career basically, because that's when I got into photography full time. I almost lost this left one at a truck stop in Germany. We stopped for a quick break, and when Daniel got back in the van, he accidentally kicked it out. I didn't notice until like an hour or so later when we got to our stop for the night. I was looking everywhere and I couldn't find it, so I figured it's gotta be at that truck stop somehow. So I pull up Google Maps, start looking around at random because I have no idea where it actually is. And eventually I find one where I think that's the one, and I put it into the GPS and we start going. It's past midnight at this point and the road just gets worse and worse. It's dark, it's slushy, but it's my only bet basically, so I just keep going. And eventually I come up to the side of the truck stop and there's a ditch and a fence between us, but I'm like, I need to get in there and see if it's there. So I go through the ditch, hop the fence, and lo and behold, there it is. My left Burke right where we had parked. They've been with me ever since. They got a little too beat up eventually, so I had to retire them, but now they sit on my wall as sort of a reminder of that time and the start of my career basically. This is just like an old postcard of the only city slash town on a Swedish island called Gotland. My brother and I go car camping there every summer, so this is just sort of a reminder of all the good times I've had over there. This is my boarding pass to New York in 2013. It was an absolute dream destination of mine at the time, and I kept the boarding pass as sort of a reminder of that trip. This is a pretty good example of my sentimental nature because this ticket's 12 years old and now it's framed and on my wall. Like I mentioned earlier, Into the Wild is one of my favorite movies, and in the van we had this exact poster but in much larger scale, so I thought it'd be fun to get a smaller scale one and put it up here on my wall. And last but certainly not least, this is my dad's old camera and my first 35mm camera when I got into that world of photography. Film got kind of expensive, unfortunately, so I don't use it all that much anymore, but every now and then I'll unhook it and bust it out because I love film photography. So yeah, I've always been sentimental like that, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. It gets a little annoying at times because it's really hard to part ways with things even if you don't need them, but I've always loved the idea of my kids or even my grandkids going through my things one day and finding little bits and pieces that tell us the story of my life. So I'm just gonna keep at it.